What is going on, Nuggets Nation NBA fans? My name is Tom Leuthner. Welcome back to another episode of Nuggets Today, presented by Fan Arts. We have some topics to cover. Obviously, we have a couple off days now for the preseason, but I do want to talk about some players I haven't talked about, a potential trade candidate, and obviously some things that are happening around the league. And the first person I want to start off with is Bruce Brown. Now, I think that everybody that's a Nuggets fan is happy to have Bruce back, or just about everybody at least. And I think that he's going to be a massive part of this team. And I think that he has his strengths and he has his weaknesses. And I think we all know what those are. But at the same time, I think that we're expecting so much more of him just because of how the first team was that he was on. And his jump shot looks flawless. I know that, listen, even if he doesn't make every one, there's something about his jump shot that to me is just so smooth and so buttery, and it looks good. So when he's able to consistently make jump shots, which I think he's able to do, and I remember his first stint with Denver, he was talking about how teams didn't think he could shoot the ball, so they didn't want to bring him in. They didn't want to sign him because that's what they were nervous about. He came to Denver, and he was playing a shooting guard role where he was knocking down threes whenever they needed him to. So I think that he's, a good fit, and I think that he's going to be just as good, if not better, than he was the first stint, hopefully. And I think when you look at last year's roster, he sort of makes up for, the lack of shooting from Westbrook. But the only thing that I don't like is this, I guess his flaw is this upcoming year that we've seen so far in preseason. And that is the fact that he doesn't look confident handling the ball. And I think that Denver brought him in thinking that he was going to be the backup point guard. And even in his pressers, he said that he could play anything from the 1 to the 5. Obviously, he won't be playing the 5 because Denver has Jonas and Jokic, but he looks like he can't handle the pressure if teams are going to start pressing him when he's handling the ball. In the Raptors game, one specific possession, he dribbles right past half court, gets sort of locked up, and ball just goes right out of bounds, which you can't have as a backup point guard, or lack of backup point guard, I guess, there for Denver right now. So, like I said, I'm happy he's back, but I do think he has his flaws, and those flaws have shown this preseason. And I think that Denver needs to pivot and look into something else when it comes to that backup point guard role. They can run the staggered lineup where Jamal plays the 1 for that backup role, and then maybe you bring in a guy like Cam eventually and stagger the starters with the bench. But I also think there's too much talent on the bench to not have a backup point guard to run with a full group of 10 to 11 guys. So, like I said, I think that he's a big part of this Denver offense, but he's also a little bit flawed when it comes to ball handling, especially off the bench, being the primary ball handler that Denver brought him in to be. But again, he has his strengths on defense as well. So I think there's more positives than negatives when it comes to Bruce, but I also get a little nervous. So the next topic I want to hop into here is obviously the ball handling and what can Denver possibly do. Now, you got to go out, I think, at this point and either sign somebody or trade for somebody. Now, a guy like Monte, I know everybody doesn't like the thought of bringing Monte in, and Bruce is so much better, and Pickett's so much better. Pickett still looks awkward with the ball. I mean, like I said last episode or 2 episodes ago, anytime he's dribbling, it just sort of looks like he doesn't know what he's doing, and he just, he's awkward. And a guy like Monte would come in just to give a little bit of, I guess, help to the backup point guard position. Not to mention, Monte was a starter for a Denver playoff run when Jamal tore his ACL. So I think he's good enough to be there when it comes to just ball handling. I'm not saying Monte needs to come in and play 25 minutes a game. I'm not saying that he has to come in and play 20 minutes a game. If he's playing 8 to 12 minutes a game just to ball handle so Jamal can get, his break and come in, then so be it. I think that Jalen Pickett will still have his opportunities. I know people like him. I don't. But I think that you need to look into somebody like a guy like Monte where you can handle the ball. The other person I was thinking about was, a trade, and for some reason it just came to my head. Javon Carter. Now, he's not everybody's favorite player in the world. He's not this great offensive player, but I just think when it comes to ball handling, he's a veteran who knows how to handle the ball, especially under pressure. And it would have to be a trade from Chicago, and the trade would have to involve, I believe it was Zeke Naji, Jalen Pickett, and cash considerations just for him. The only thing I'd be weary about if Denver was to try to bring him in is the fact that he's on a 3-year contract. I believe it's around $20 million for the contract, and he is 30 years old. So it would make me a little weird to bring in a guy who's that old and you have to pay him for the next couple of years. And you don't want to tie yourselves up with the contracts like you did with MPJ, Jamal, Jokic, AG all in the same offseason. So maybe somebody cheaper if there is an option out there. But like I said, I think that he's just the first guy that pops into my head, and I guess he's a viable backup in my opinion. The other thing I think you could transition into is potentially attempting to make Julian Strawther a playmaking point guard off the bench, where you could still run a lineup of him, Bruce, even Tim Hardaway at the small forward, Payne Watson at the 4, and then you have Val, you have Duran, you have Zeke. Whether you bring in Kessler or Moses or not, you have one of them to play the 5. I think it could be a good idea because I think that you still get the lineup that you want, and I think that the the style of play of Julian and Tim Hardaway sort of mash with each other, and they might not be able to be on the floor at the same times if there's not a main playmaker out there like a guy like Jokic, even Val. So I think that it might be interesting to see what you can potentially do with Julian Strawther's versatility and seeing if he can handle the ball. And, he could still play off ball a little bit here and there, but if he's able to handle the ball, and then you have a guy like Tim Hardaway who's able to spot up and shoot his threes, a guy like P. Watt who's able to get to the basket, Bruce is there for defense but can also handle the ball a little bit, and maybe you stagger that point guard role between a couple guys instead of just one, with that being Bruce or Pickett. Like I said, there's still work to do, but Strawther's young enough to be able to help develop him into a player that can actually handle the ball more than people would think, and that's just my opinion on it. But I do think that he could be a guy who, is a little more confident with the ball and can be that ball handler, and he's a little bit more flashy, and he can create his own shot. So I think maybe test that out if you don't want to sign or trade for anybody, because I think he might be the best bet right now off the bench. Like I said, maybe it's Pickett eventually, but I just think that he looks too awkward with the ball. And there's just not confidence, in my opinion, when he's handling the ball. There's confidence when he's shooting it, which is a good thing because then maybe he could build a role into this lineup while shooting. But I just don't think he looks confident enough to handle the ball, especially in big pressure moments, in my opinion. Now, the last thing I want to get into is a topic I've had the last couple of days, and just how the preseason is for others. And I sort of like this topic because I think you're able to cover a lot of ground, well, also just, giving it a minute or two. And the first thing I want to get to is the Timberwolves, and Johnny Juzang and Bones Highland both look very good for them. I wish that Bones Highland was still a Nugget because he's good. He's a scorer. He's exactly what Denver needs right now, a guy who can handle the ball and play and score for you. I know his defense is atrocious, but same thing with Johnny Juzang, a guy who could knock down shots. I know that they brought in Tim Hardaway Jr., but I was very high on Juzang the entire offseason. I believe I was saying that for a couple episodes. They, like I said, they've been playing very well. And then the last thing I want to cover is something that happened in the Eastern Conference 2 days ago, I guess, and that is that DeLon Wright got what looked pretty bad, like a pretty bad injury. I think he took like an elbow to the head and then smacked his head on the floor. So the double head shot, which isn't good, it looked like a severe concussion the way he fell. And then with that being said, obviously hopes and prayers go out to him. Hopefully he does have a quick recovery. But that does mean that the Pacers will be less likely to trade T.J. McConnell if there was any likeliness in that happening. So, like I said, I hope DeLon Wright is doing okay and is able to come back and play this season. So prayers up to him. But that is all I got for you guys today. Make sure to like and subscribe. And if you guys want me to cover anything, let me know down below and I will get to it. But until then, I'll see you guys tomorrow and have a good day.